I wanted to talk about this because I think the contrast here is important when we see, once again, this is the March for Life, which is a very important day for those of us that are pro-life advocates and have been fighting for this cause for a long time. But also when you talk about what we saw in Minnesota in that church, where individuals overran the church and they got in the face and they intimidated people, and their entire goal was to terrorize people that were trying to exercise their faith on a Sunday. You have that, and you see the Justice Department rightfully going after people that were violating the law there. But what we have to fight for people that are peaceful protesters, peaceful advocates that stand with signs, and we see that governments make laws to try and make simple, peaceful demonstrations illegal. And that's what we're fighting for in Carbondale, Illinois, and we're actually having to file an appeal. Give us a little bit of background in what we're having to do today on this March for Life Day.
Exactly. So it's very appropriate that this is what we're doing today on the day of the March for Life. So our client, Brandon Hamman, all he wants to do is share the gospel outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. He's not aggressive or confrontational. He's just trying to share the message of hope and the gospel with people who might be entering the clinic. So as part of that, he has small signs like will be carried in their thousands today in DC. And with those small signs, he simply communicates his Christian message of hope and a message of life. And because of those signs, of course, the city came after him and told him he had to take away his signs. And he asked the police officers, would you go after someone else with different signs? And these police officers, they were honest. They were like, no, I don't think the city would go after it. In fact, there's even a similar sign across the street for a fast food restaurant. That sign was fine, but not the pro-life sign. No, Carbondale sent people after him to make sure that he took down his small signs that he just had with him as he was seeking to share the gospel.
And once again, we see this all over the country. And obviously, we were talking about Illinois, a state that people are like, okay, well, it's Illinois, but we see it all over the country. It doesn't matter what state, no matter how conservative or how liberal the state is. You see a lot of times municipalities make these ordinances, make these laws to target speech. But it's not just that the speech is like, we don't want any signs. We don't want the way it looks. We don't want to aesthetically detract from our city with signage. But we see time and time again, it is specifically viewpoint discrimination. It is the specifics of the speech, of the sign that they are targeting, not just the visibility of signs in general. And once again, that's what we're having to deal with here in Carbondale, Illinois.
Exactly. And in fact, we sought a preliminary injunction in this case. And when we were there in court, one of the police officers admitted on the stand that they were targeting these signs because of their message. So we're appealing this case now to the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit, which is in Chicago. And there we will be arguing that the court should issue an injunction overruling the decision of the court below here and affirm the First Amendment rights of our client as he seeks to share the gospel and proclaim the truth about life. And it's particularly important on a day like today with the March for Life happening as we speak, that people stand up for the cause of life, right? The March for Life is in DC, but people are standing for life all over the country. So it's such a privilege that today we get to file an appeal for someone trying to share the gospel and the message of hope and life outside an abortion clinic.
And once again, folks, these cases, they take a while. They take resources. They take hours and hours from our wonderful attorneys like Nathan and the team in D.C. and around the country. But this is just on the preliminary injunction stage that we're already at the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Once again, even if we are successful here on the preliminary injunction stage, we still have to go back to the district court for the rest of the case, for the merits of the case. And that takes time and resources. So, Nathan, we're grateful to you and the hardworking attorneys at the ACLJ, but this isn't something you planned for to be filing on a Friday of the March for Life. That is because we are always ready to respond. We are always, even when you're preparing for a winter storm, always ready to be there in court. Even though you were just a week and a half ago in Houston, in New Orleans, rather, on behalf of a client out of Houston for her free speech rights, being able to pray as a teacher in public school. We are all over the country, never stopping. But this is not over even here at this appeal stage. This is a long fight ahead, and that's why people should support the ACLJ as we continue to fight for Americans' rights.
Exactly. And in fact, we're really all over the country right now, particularly on issues related to life. So I got to be out in Missouri this past week for the trial there as part of a wonderful team. We have a bunch of attorneys working on that case, and I got to be there for a couple of days. And just next week, we will be in court again in Boston defending a pro-life pregnancy center that has been called dangerous and a public health crisis by the state there in Massachusetts. So the fight for life really just has intensified in these last few years. And it's just wonderful to be a part of the ACLJ where we're on the forefront of so many of these important battles.
Vice President Vance speaking on the March for Life right now.
For the thousands of men and women and children, for the church groups, the school groups, the grandparents and the toddlers and everyone in between who braved this chilly Washington afternoon, all of us in the Trump administration, from the president on down, we thank you for your prayers, we thank you for your perseverance, and we thank you that for today, we are all marching for life. I know a lot of us heard from the president just before this, so you know that he loves and cares deeply about this movement. And it's why he has fought for the pro-life cause and why we do it in this administration. And it's why 3 years ago, we cannot forget, he delivered and his Supreme Court justices delivered the most important Supreme Court decision of my lifetime. Because with the Dobbs decision, what we did, what the president did, what the Supreme Court did, was put a definitive end to the tyranny of judicial rule on the question of human life. He shattered a 50-year culture of disposability, one that treated human life as expendable the moment that it became inconvenient. And he empowered our nation and our movement to build a culture of life from the grassroots up. And over the last year, I gotta brag a little bit, our administration has worked very hard to lead that effort and to pick up the pieces, to clean up the wreckages of 5 decades of bad policy on the question of life.
I think that this is an important moment, and I really do. When you see the vice president out there, and you know we're only a few years from another presidential election, which will serve as a new president, you have to remember the impact. When a lot of people give you grief and may say, why did you vote for President Trump? Why do you support President Trump when you see what's going on with ICE? Or maybe you disagree with some of the rhetoric. Maybe you disagree even though you voted for President Trump on some of the ways he has handled certain situations. And then you have moments like this. And understand, I've been in this pro-life fight for my entire life. No president or vice president has come out and made these kind of bold statements, other than maybe you could say, President Trump and Mike Pence probably did, but other than Trump administrations. Whether you want to push back and say, I don't know if they believe it or they don't believe it, if they're just pandering to who they think is going to vote for them. You know what? The laws say one thing, and that is that regardless if they believe it or not, I do believe that at least you have J.D. Vance here speaking very passionately. They got it done. So hold your head high and know that if you're part of this pro-life cause, this should be celebrated. And over the last year alone, we have had over 200 legal pro-life matters here at the ACLJ. Because though, as Vice President Vance said, though the tide is turning and though you had something like Dobbs overturn Roe versus Wade, the states all got much more aggressive. And the ones who wanted to go as far into the culture of death have done it more than ever.